Welcome to Is It Covered, where we break down real stories and answer the big question, is it covered? Hosted by father and son duo Bruce and Brian Chapman of the J.D. Chapman Insurance Agency. This podcast will help you navigate the world of insurance with stories, tips, and answers that really matter. From personal to commercial coverage, we've got you covered. Now, let's get started.
Alrighty, welcome back everybody to another episode of Is It Covered? How are you today, Bruce?
I'm doing well, thanks.
Awesome. So this is going to be a special little mini-series that we're going to do here over the next 4 or 5 episodes. We're going to do something and break down what they call nuclear verdicts in the insurance industry. And just as a quick disclaimer, these are insurance claims that have been paid out. So,
but not by us.
But not by us. Nope, not by us. And so we'll get to bang our brand new gavel, thanks to our friend Steve.
Yes.
So we'll get to bang to say that it's covered.
Perfect.
But as always, before we get started, you know, this podcast is really meant to be more tips and tricks, kind of navigate certain scenarios. Every insurance policy is written differently. Claims are very different. It's very dependent on what happens. So always consult your agent, your insurance company, if you have any questions regarding those types of claims.
Perfect.
So before we get started right into the nuclear verdicts, we should probably explain to everybody, you know, what is a nuclear verdict and why is it called a nuclear verdict?
Okay, perfect. Well, a nuclear verdict is not a verdict based on nuclear weapons. It is a super large verdict, typically over $10 million. And you hear about these, they make the news. Oftentimes they don't make the news. They're disproportionate in the actual damages, and a lot of that is because of punitive damages. So as a little bit of education, punitive damages are the damages that say you did wrong, and because of that, I'm going to fine you a big giant number in the tens of millions of dollars so that you change your behavior. The courts would say that. In New York State, punitive damages are not covered by insurance, which is pretty important to know.
Yeah.
Only your actual damages. So typically, they come about because of emotional jury influences. Juries are swayed by emotional factors or egregious facts of a case, or social or corporate accountability.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of it is driven by the courts and the juries. Brian, you have a few things about common causes on nuclear verdicts?
Yeah, so typically nuclear verdicts, as you said, are verdicts that go, you know, tens of millions of dollars. And what can cause some of those is typically there's some type of a catastrophic injury, unfortunately a fatality. I mean, we're talking claims that, you know, not necessarily are the best thing to read about. There can be severe corporate negligence or misconduct. You know, I think everybody likes to look at some of the large corporations as, you know, the evil large corporations, and they should be held responsible and they have the money for it. So there's some of that sway of the emotional piece of it with the jury. Sometimes that's why those get up to the point where they are. And that goes right into the public outrage and mistrust of large companies. I mean, that is a driving or a common cause of a nuclear verdict. And then, you know, everybody likes to see somebody take responsibility, you know, for their actions. So a lot of the times failure by the defendant or the person being sued to take any responsibility for this, maybe they're trying to push it off to somebody else or so on. You know, those are some common causes that would drive a verdict up to make it more of a nuclear verdict.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, there's some impacts, though. These nuclear verdicts, you know, you hear about them sometimes in the news, and then us insurance guys, we think, oh, goodness, now what's this going to do to rates and so on and so forth. But there's some other impacts, right, that happen after these nuclear verdicts?
Yeah, for sure. And it's not all covered by insurance. Not every company is going to cover those punitive damages. And most of the big companies, they're not going to carry, you know, $100 million worth of insurance. They may not anyways. But they may have hundreds of billions of dollars of assets that juries will attach or judges will attach. Just like all these big claims, it drives up insurance costs. It also, there's increased focuses on tort reform, so that the government says we want to, 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 we this is more of an attorney type thing.
Sure, yeah.
But we want to change the legal landscape on tort or how things are settled.
Right. And sometimes it can lead to some like higher pretrial settlements. I know you hear a lot about that, where it's,
exactly.
They try to settle this out of court so it doesn't become a nuclear verdict, or it doesn't become a
absolutely
high dollar thing for the company.
For sure.
So I think that kind of can drive some higher pretrial agreements.
And that's why insurance companies, they look to settle out of court, because it's cheaper for them to settle out of court than to go to court. And that's true of nuclear verdicts or really any type of a verdict. They want to come to some sort of an agreement before things escalate to a court case.
Right. And, you see on TV all the time, hey, my injury was worth this. And you see these high dollar values. Now, there's typically a difference between the judgment amount that you see and then the actual amount that's settled upon afterwards. So
100%.
That's something that personally I just learned recently. I would see, 10 million and say, wow, that person just made 10 million. Well, that's not typically the case. So
right.
There's a difference there.
Absolutely.
So when a nuclear verdict's paid out, what happens? So your insurance, let's say you've got $1 million policy and $1 million umbrella.
Mm-hmm.
You eat up all of that, and you're now in a legal battle where it's going to go above and beyond what your insurance is covering. So what happens if you're sued, all your underlying limits are used? Where do they get the additional money? Or how is it settled, I guess, once your insurance is used up?
Well, they can attach corporate assets. They can organize structured payments from the corporation that's being sued. In certain cases, they can go after personal assets. And sometimes you'll even see where a company will file for bankruptcy just because they can't afford to make that type of a payment.
Yeah.
So they're going to try to get their pound of flesh, even though the verdict may be in the $100 million range. The claimant may not actually get that amount.
Right, exactly. And, if it's something that happened to you maybe personally, they do have the ability to put liens on assets and garnish wages and so on. So
there's also appeals. So, I mean, if there's that big of a payout, that company is going to definitely appeal and try to make those payouts less.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And, you look at some of these nuclear verdicts and you say, how is anyone ever going to pay this?
Exactly.
And, again, there's some payment option plans of it that they have or that, can be negotiated, I guess. But, it could leave you completely bankrupt.
For
Could
sure.
leave you holding the bag.
Destroy your business.
Yeah, absolutely.
Once again, it makes sense to practice good practices with your employees and safety. Safety is, you can't stress safety enough.
Yeah.
Safety helps in so many different ways.
Absolutely. A lot of these nuclear verdicts that we'll get into in some future episodes may or may not be able to be avoided, but a lot of it is a safety issue. So
for sure,
having the right insurance policy with the right limits, having a good safety officer or somebody that can, make sure your business runs in a safe capacity are probably some good things to think about.
Yeah, absolutely. And not to mention the fact that it's going to help your workers' compensation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And a lot of these claims are probably our workers' comp claims. So,
and it sucks when someone's injured.
Yeah, it's never fun. It's
not a good thing.
No, I know. Absolutely not.
No.
So, all right.
Well, there's nothing to say, is it covered or not? That's just a little bit of education. But I think that in our future episode, we'll get into a little bit more on some of the cases, and we can show how they settled out.
Perfect. Sounds like a plan.
Great.
Thanks.
See you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Is It Covered podcast. To learn more about how JD Chapman can assist you with all your insurance needs, please visit our website at jdchapmaninc.com or call us at 315-986-4062. JD Chapman, we've got you covered. This podcast provides general information only and does not offer or bind insurance coverage. Coverage cannot be changed or confirmed through this podcast, email, voicemail, or fax. Insurance only takes effect once confirmed by a licensed agent. For specific coverage details, please call us at 315-986-4062. All coverages are subject to the terms, conditions, and exclusions of the issued policy, which may vary by state. This podcast does not provide legal, tax, or financial advice. Please consult a professional for those needs. Links to other sites are provided for convenience. We don't control or endorse their content. Any claims scenarios discussed are hypothetical. Coverage decisions depend on the specifics of each case.